I've always been more of an observer, someone who prefers to watch from a distance rather than forming close relationships. This habit, however, led me into a situation I could never have imagined. When I moved to the city, I rented an apartment in a quaint complex, hoping to find work and enjoy the bustling environment. My landlords, Monica Stevens, and her husband Dylan, lived just 2 doors down. My apartment wasn't anything extravagant, but it had a view of the rooftop garden and a direct line of sight into the Stevens kitchen. Monica caught my eye almost immediately. Every morning I'd wake up to see her sitting at the kitchen table absorbed in a book, her long blonde curls hiding her face. But there was something off. Each time Dylan entered the room, her demeanor changed. He'd berate her, slam her book shut, and storm out, leaving her in a state of silent distress. I couldn't help but watch, feeling a growing attachment to her. Dylan was a brute, and it was clear he didn't appreciate her. I was convinced he was unfaithful and abusive. Monica rarely left the apartment, except on Saturday mornings when she tended to the rooftop garden. I could tell she was trapped, living in fear. For weeks, I watched their interactions, waiting for the right moment to intervene. One morning, Dylan's abuse escalated. He struck Monica, causing her to slam her head on the kitchen table. That was the last straw. I decided to confront him. I followed him to the elevator, trying to seem casual. When I introduced myself, he reacted aggressively, grabbing my arm and threatening me. He knew I had been watching them. His violent response confirmed my fears. Monica was in danger, and I had to help her. Saturday arrived, and I prepared to finally speak to Monica. I watched Dylan wheel her to the rooftop, shouting at her before leaving her there. I waited until he was gone before heading up. When I reached the rooftop, Monica was sitting there, her blonde hair covering her face. I approached her, heart pounding, ready to declare my love and rescue her from her torment. But when I turned her around, I was met with a horrifying sight. Monica's eyes were sewn shut, her mouth stitched into a grotesque line, and her body was in an advanced state of decay. Her legs were missing, jagged stumps rotting away. The beautiful woman I thought I knew was a mutilated corpse. Till I fled, vomiting in the hallway. Before rushing back to my apartment, my mind was reeling, filled with grief and rage. Dylan had done this to her, and he had to be stopped. Grabbing a hammer, I broke into their apartment, determined to find evidence. A stench of rotting flesh hit me as I entered. In the kitchen, just out of my usual line of sight, was a meat hook with Monica's severed leg hanging from it. Dylan had been butchering her. I pushed deeper into the apartment, finding bloodstains in the bedroom. My heart pounded as I realized the full extent of his depravity. Suddenly, Dylan returned, threatening whoever was in his home. I hid in the bathroom, clutching the hammer. When he entered the bedroom, I attacked, striking him in the temple. He screamed and I ran, adrenaline fueling my escape. I cleaned myself up, disposing of my bloodied clothes. The police arrived, alerted by a neighbor, and discovered the gruesome scene. Monica's body was taken away, and I attended her closed casket funeral. Standing in the back, after the burial, I left the city, unable to bear the memories. I still dream of her, imagining the life we could have had. We moved to a cottage just like I dreamed we would. And every night, I whisper to her memory, promising that one day, we will be together in a place where no one can hurt her again. If you notice any of the following symptoms in your companions during a camping trip, do not approach or attempt to help. Run immediately and call 911. The tragedy that befell us wasn't caused by my dog. Despite what the authorities are claiming, they insist that my loyal companion, Bazooka, is responsible for the deaths of those unfortunate souls at the cabin. They say she snapped that she, being a bully breed, somehow broke into the cabin and brutally attacked them, now facing charges for the deaths of the family who stayed there. But I swear it wasn't my dog. Whatever terror took those lives is still out there, lurking somewhere in northern Minnesota, near that picturesque lake where we rented our cabin. I desperately hope this warning reaches those who need it. To those who think I'm to blame, Bazooka would never harm anyone. She was a sweet and loving dog, despite her intimidating name, which was inherited from the rescue group I adopted her from. She was a pit lab mix, black with a white muzzle and paws, and had the clumsy energy of a rocket on 4 legs. I tried calling her Beverly for a month, but she stubbornly responded only to Bazooka. Despite her lack of intelligence, she was notorious for slamming into glass doors and getting confused by doggy doors. She was incredibly affectionate. Every night, her 70-pound frame would worm its way onto my bed, and even though I'd eventually give in after shoving her off a few times, I found comfort in her presence. She would stare at me with those dark, soulful eyes, as if memorizing every detail of my face. Bazooka meant the world to me. Forgive me for reminiscing. I miss her deeply. So about that fateful weekend, my friend Jake and I, both board game enthusiasts, decided to rent a cabin for a gaming getaway. We invited Rod and Rashida, another board game loving couple, and I insisted on bringing Bazooka along. The cabin was a deliciously lakeshore retreat with kayaks, canoes, and a grill. It was spacious with a balcony deck and rooms, both upstairs and downstairs, perfect for our gaming retreat. The first day was spent grilling hot dogs and veggie burgers, while we played board games on the balcony. The only hiccup was when I saw two boys by the lake, one of them urinating off the dock and the other tearing up a pool noodle and tossing it at ducks. Disturbing behavior, especially since they were carrying guns when I saw them later. From that point on, I kept Bazooka leashed, not wanting to risk her encountering those disruptive kids. But the evening went smoothly. We had a bonfire, roasted marshmallows, and stargazed. It was one of the few times I felt truly connected with others. The next morning, Bazooka woke me up early, whining to go outside. I stumbled out, forgetting my resolve to keep her on a leash, and found her sniffing around the docks. I noticed the kayaks were on the water, but there was no one in them. I assumed it was the boys, but the neighboring cabin was quiet. The day was spent canoeing and playing more board games. After lunch, Ray and Rashida drove into town for some more supplies, leaving Jake and me by the bonfire. We were lost in conversation when Bazooka's growl broke the peaceful night. I turned to see one of the boys, dripping wet and barely clothed, standing by the fire. His vacant stare and the drool trailing from his mouth unsettled me. Jake tried to check on him, but the boy's glazed eyes and lack of response were alarming. Jake decided to take him to his parents at the neighboring cabin. I was relieved but still uneasy about Bazooka's strange behavior. When Ray and Rashida returned, we headed to the other cabin to find Jake. The moonlight cast eerie shadows as we approached, with Bazooka's barking fading in the distance. The door to the cabin swung open slightly, and we stepped inside. The cabin was dark and eerily silent. Ray's scream pierced the air as she found Jake swaying, eyes unfocused, and then collapsing with a thud. I tried to call 911 while Ray attended to Jake. Suddenly, Rashida screamed from upstairs about a woman with her face torn open. I saw the boy from the lake descending the stairs, covered in blood and looking feral. In a desperate act of self-defense, Bazooka, having somehow managed to use the doggy door, launched herself at the boy, attacking him and giving us a chance to escape. I grabbed Rashida and urged her to flee. Ray, unable to move Jake, followed us outside. The three of us ran to the car, leaving Jake behind in the cabin. As we drove away, I was left alone, the dispatcher's voice still in my ear, while the reality of our situation hit me. I raced back to our cabin, searching for my keys, only to find Jake standing outside on the deck, his vacant stare unnerving. As I tried to flee through the sliding door, I found Bazooka outside, her head drooping and eyes hollow. I managed to get into my car and drive away, leaving the cabin and the horrors behind. In the aftermath, the authorities concluded that Bazooka had been responsible for the deaths at the cabin. The boy had her bite marks, which they used as evidence against her. They labeled Jake's death as a heart attack, and Bazooka remains missing. Losing my beloved dog is the hardest part. Despite the human lives lost, her disappearance is a wound that won't heal. I wonder if a part of her still wanders those woods, waiting for me to call her name again. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with fellow horror enthusiasts, and subscribe for more spine-tingling stories. Your support keeps the fright alive. Stay tuned for our next unsettling episode.